Yesterday I checked my phone and realized something disturbing. I had spent 4 hours scrolling through content I didn't remember seeing. 4 hours of my life that simply evaporated. And then a question hit me that left me motionless for several minutes. If I really believed I was going to die someday, would I have wasted those 4 hours that way? The answer terrified me more than any thought about death itself. We live in the strangest of existential paradoxes. We are the only species conscious of our mortality, and yet we act as if we were immortal. We have terror of death. We build entire belief systems to avoid confronting it. We develop paralyzing anxieties just from thinking about it. But we live each day as if we had an infinite reserve of time. It's as if we were emotional vampires who fear sunlight, but spend all eternity hidden in coffins. This contradiction is not accidental. It's the symptom of something much deeper and more disturbing. We have developed a form of death in life that is more comfortable than the vulnerability of being truly alive. Fear of death has become a perfect excuse for not living, because truly living requires facing the possibility of losing everything we love, including ourselves. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you postponed an important conversation because there will be time? How many experiences have you avoided because it's too risky? How many times have you chosen comfort over adventure, security over passion, routine over the unknown? Not because you didn't want those experiences, but because deep in your mind whispered a voice that said, "Why risk what you have? In the end, everything ends the same way." But here's the cruel irony. By avoiding life's risks to protect ourselves from death, we create a form of premature death. We become ghosts of ourselves, inhabiting an existence so safe and predictable that it becomes indistinguishable from non-existence. It's as if we preferred a slow and comfortable death over an intense but finite life. The ancient Greeks had a concept that our modern culture has completely forgotten: the difference between chronos and kairos. Chronos is linear, mechanical time, the kind that marks our clocks and calendars. It's time that runs out. Kairos is qualitative time, the perfect moment, the experience so full that it transcends temporality. It's time that expands. We have built our entire civilization around chronos, measuring our lives in years, days, hours, minutes, as if quantity were all that matters. But Kairos teaches us that a single moment lived with complete intensity can be worth more than decades of automatic existence. When I was a child, one summer could feel like an eternity. An afternoon playing stretched infinitely, not because time was different, but because I was completely present in each instant. There was no part of me projected toward the future worrying about what would come, nor anchored in the past, lamenting what was. My entire being was concentrated on the now, and paradoxically, that total concentration made time expand like a universe. But something changed as we grew up. We began to live more and more in chronos and less in kairos. We started measuring our lives by external achievements, by future goals, by comparisons with others. We developed the ability to be physically present but mentally absent. And with that absence, time began to accelerate alarmingly. Days became blurry, years passed, without us being able to really remember what we had lived in them. This acceleration is not accidental. It's the direct result of living in survival mode rather than experience mode. When we're in survival, our nervous system is constantly scanning the future for threats and reviewing the past for patterns to keep us safe. This function is crucial for staying alive, but when it becomes our default state, we stop experiencing the present. And without the present, there's no real life, only a sequence of anxieties about what might happen and regrets about what already happened. Modern industry exploits this disconnection brutally. It sells us infinite entertainment to fill the void. of not being really alive, offers constant distractions to avoid facing the reality of our mortality, promises that happiness is always in the next product, the next update, the next season of our favorite series. It's as if there were a silent conspiracy to keep us in a state of semi-life, conscious enough to consume, but not awake enough to question whether this is really living. And here's where death enters as the great teacher we have rejected. In traditional cultures, death was not the enemy that should be avoided at all costs, but the wise counselor who gave meaning and urgency to life. Medieval monks practiced memento mori. Remember that you will die, not as a morbid practice, but as a way to awaken to the precious reality of the present moment. They knew something we have forgotten. That awareness of death is what gives flavor to life. When we truly integrate the reality of our mortality, not as an abstract idea, but as a living truth, something profound changes in us. The small worries that consume our days reveal their true insignificance. The resentments we carry like precious treasures become absurd burdens we no longer want to bear. The masks we wear to impress others feel like ridiculous costumes we no longer need. But most importantly, we begin to value experiences over possessions, connections over transactions, authenticity over approval. When you know your time is limited, each moment becomes a unique and unrepeatable opportunity. You can't afford to waste your life on superficial relationships, jobs you hate, or activities that don't nourish your soul, because you understand that each passing day is a day that will never return. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It requires what existential psychologists call ontological anxiety, the courage to face existence's fundamental uncertainty. It's the bravery to admit that we don't know what happens after death, that we have no guarantees about tomorrow, that everything we love, including ourselves, is temporarily borrowed from the universe. The first stage of this awakening is what we could call the shock of recognition. It's that moment when the reality of your mortality stops being an abstract idea and becomes a visceral truth. It can come through a loved one's illness, an accident you almost had, or simply a moment of clarity where you realize that time really is running out. This shock can be terrifying, but it's necessary. It's like waking up from a dream in which you believed you had all the time in the world. The second stage is ego resistance. Your rational mind, designed to keep you safe and comfortable, will begin to create all kinds of distractions and justifications to move you away from this new awareness. It will tell you that you're too young to worry about death, that you have more important responsibilities, that thinking about these things is depressing or unproductive. This resistance is normal and expected. The ego doesn't want you to wake up because that means it can no longer control you with its little fears and desires. The third stage is priority reorganization. Once you accept the reality of your mortality, you naturally begin to evaluate everything in your life through the lens of what really matters. Things that once seemed crucial, strangers' opinions, social status, accumulation of possessions, begin to reveal their truly superficial nature. At the same time, things you had taken for granted, someone's laughter whom you love, the sensation of sun on your skin, the opportunity to create something beautiful, become precious beyond all measure. The fourth stage is the awakening of intensity. With reorganized priorities, you begin to live with a quality of presence you had forgotten was possible. Colors look more vibrant, conversations become deeper, everyday experiences are charged with meaning. It's not that the world has changed, but that you have awakened to the richness that was always there, but that you had been too distracted to notice. The fifth stage is the integration of wisdom. In this phase, awareness of death becomes not a source of constant anxiety, but a wise companion that guides you toward more authentic decisions and fuller experiences. You no longer need to constantly remind yourself that you're going to die, because you've integrated that truth so deeply into your being that it naturally informs the way you choose to live. This integration leads us to the most transformative insight of all. We don't really fear death. We fear unlived life. The terror we feel when we think about dying is not so much about the event of death itself, but about the terrible possibility of reaching the end and realizing we were never really alive. It's the fear of dying with our music still inside us, with our words of love never spoken, with our dreams never attempted, with our true self never expressed. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, said something that should be engraved at the entrance of every cemetery. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you are. But most of us spend our lives trying to be who we think we should be, who others want us to be, who it's safe to be. We build elaborate social personas to navigate the world, but in the process, we bury our authentic self so deeply that sometimes we no longer even remember who we were before the world told us who we had to be. Death, paradoxically, is what can free us from this prison of expectations. When you truly accept that your time here is limited, others' approval becomes much less important than your own soul's approval. External judgments lose their power over you because you understand that at the moment of your death, you will be completely alone with the decisions you made and the person you chose to be. This doesn't mean becoming irresponsible or selfish. On the contrary, when you live from awareness of your mortality, you naturally become more compassionate, more present, more generous with your love and attention. Because you understand that we're all in the same boat, navigating the same fundamental experience of being temporarily conscious in an infinite universe. We're all doing our best with the time we have. Real life begins when we stop postponing everything important for when we have more time, and begin to recognize that this moment, this exact moment, is the only one we really have. The past no longer exists except in our memories. The future is only a mental projection. The only reality is now, and now is where life happens. This doesn't mean living impulsively or irresponsibly. It means living with conscious intention, actively choosing how to invest your vital energy instead of allowing it to be consumed by default, by distractions and obligations that don't nourish your soul. It means asking yourself regularly, if I knew I had only 6 months left to live, would I continue doing what I'm doing now? Would I keep postponing that conversation, that trip, that creative project, that expression of love? The answer to those questions will tell you everything you need to know about whether you're really alive or just existing. And if the answer makes you uncomfortable, that discomfort is not your enemy. It's your compass pointing toward a more authentic life. Many people have asked me if this philosophy doesn't lead to despair or nihilism. The answer is exactly the opposite. When you truly integrate your mortality, each moment is charged with almost sacred meaning. Each conversation potentially becomes the last you'll have with that person. Each sunrise is a unique and unrepeatable gift. Each opportunity to create, to love, to grow, to serve is revealed as the temporary blessing it truly is. The Stoics had an exercise called premeditatio malorum, imagining the loss of everything you love to learn to value it while you have it. It wasn't a pessimistic practice, but deeply practical. Because when you really appreciate the temporary nature of everything you care about, you naturally become more present, more grateful, more willing to express your love and appreciation while you still can. This perspective also completely transforms your relationship with failure and rejection. When you understand that your time is limited, fear of failure reveals itself as what it really is, an excuse not to try. What does it matter if you fail? What does it matter if others judge you? In the end, what will matter will not be how many times you fell, but whether you had the courage to try to live the life you really wanted to live. Rejection becomes information, not devastation. Criticism becomes data, not truth about your worth. Obstacles transform into opportunities to grow, not excuses to give up. Because when you know your time is finite, you can't afford to waste years of your life paralyzed by fears that in the grand scheme of things are completely insignificant. Here's the secret no one tells you about death. It's not the opposite of life. It's what gives shape to life. Without death, nothing would have urgency, nothing would be precious, nothing would require courage. Death is what converts each moment into a unique opportunity, each choice into something meaningful, each day into a gift that can be withdrawn at any moment. When hospitals began allowing families to be present during their loved ones' last moments, doctors noticed something extraordinary. People who were dying in their last hours or days didn't talk about their professional achievements, their material possessions, or their social successes. They talked about love, about relationships, about moments of deep connection, about experiences that had touched their souls, about regrets, not for things they had done, but for things they hadn't done, words they hadn't said, risks they hadn't taken. Bronnie Ware, a nurse who cared for terminal patients for years, documented the 5 most common regrets of people who are dying. The first and most common was, "I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me, not I wish I had earned more money, or I wish I had been more successful, but I wish I had been more myself." This regret should shake us to our bones, because it means most people reach the end of their lives feeling they never really lived them, that they spent decades playing a role, following a script written by others, living to fulfill external expectations while their authentic self withered from lack of expression. But it doesn't have to be this way. Each moment you're conscious, each breath you take, each beat of your heart is a new opportunity to choose authenticity over approval, experience over security, presence over distraction. Life is not something that happens to you. It's something you create moment by moment through the decisions you make, about where to put your attention and how to respond to what appears. The transformation we're talking about doesn't require dramatic external changes, though those may come naturally. It requires a fundamental change in consciousness, from living as if you had all the time in the world to living as if each moment were precious and unrepeatable. From postponing everything important to recognizing that only now exists. From avoiding intensity to keep yourself safe, to embracing intensity as the only true way to be alive. When you make this shift, you not only transform your own experience of being alive, but you become a living reminder for others of what is possible. Your presence becomes an invitation for others to awaken from their own death-in-life trance. Your authenticity gives permission for others to be authentic. Your courage inspires courage in others. This is what mystics have called for centuries, dying before dying. It's not a morbid experience, but the most liberating experience possible. It's allowing everything that isn't really you to die. All the false characters, all the expectations that aren't yours, all the fears that keep you small, so that who you really are can be born, and who you really are is much more vast, brave and beautiful than you've been taught to believe. You are the consciousness that observes all your thoughts without being defined by them. You are the love that can include all experience without being destroyed by any. You are the creativity that can respond to any situation in ways that never existed before. You are the life force itself, temporarily organized in this particular form we call your name. Death is not your enemy, it's your wisest teacher. It doesn't come to rob you of life, but to remind you that you have it. It doesn't come to terrorize you with loss, but to awaken you to the richness of what's here right now. It doesn't come to end you, but to reveal who you are beyond everything that can end. When you really understand this, something extraordinary happens. Fear of death doesn't completely disappear, but it transforms. It becomes respect for the precious temporary nature of everything you love. It becomes motivation to live with more intensity and authenticity. It becomes wisdom that guides you toward decisions that honor both the brevity and depth of human experience. And then you discover the most paradoxical truth of all. When you finally make peace with your mortality, when you stop fleeing from death toward an unlived life, when you fully embrace the fact that all of this, is temporarily borrowed and infinitely precious, that's when you finally begin to truly live. In that moment of awakening, you realize the question was never, how do I avoid death? The question was always, how do I honor life while I have it? And the answer is right here, in this moment, in your next breath, in your next decision, in your next opportunity to choose presence over absence, authenticity over performance, love over fear. Death will come when it comes. That's beyond your control. But how you live, that's completely yours. And every moment you choose to be truly present, every instant you choose to be completely yourself, every second you allow your heart to open fully to the experience of being alive, is a small victory over the death in life that consumes so many. If this message has awakened something in you, if you felt even a glimpse of recognition of your own mortality not as enemy, but as teacher, then you've already begun the most important journey of your life, the journey from existing toward truly living. Share this reflection with someone who needs to remember they're alive. Let me know in the comments, what was the moment in your life when you first realized that time is truly limited, and how that realization changed the way you chose to live.